My name is Alex Granger, 39 years old, Director of Cybersecurity at Virion Solutions for the past 12 and a half years. I started in 2011, back when our entire server infrastructure fit into a single locked closet in the basement. Today, it spans 5 data centers and half a dozen cloud regions. I built it all. Quietly, methodically. Not for applause, just because it needed to be done right. When the board announced they were bringing in a new CEO, I didn't flinch. CEOs came and went. In my time, I'd worked under 4. Some were thoughtful, some were fools, but none had ever interfered with security. Until Miles Trenholm. He arrived with buzzwords instead of questions. Digital transformation, hyper-agility, restructuring for growth. He wore sleek suits and smiled too often. His first company-wide address was full of phrases like lean out ops and democratize internal control. I listened without reacting. I'd heard corporate poetry before, but this time felt different. Within a month, 3 department heads were gone. Redundant, they said. Budgets were slashed. Vendor contracts were renegotiated down to the bone. Then came the changes to IT. Our endpoint monitoring license was downgraded. Password rotation policies were softened to avoid user friction. He even questioned why we ran weekly internal penetration tests. "Isn't that a little paranoid?" he asked, half laughing. I documented everything. Quietly updated logs, archived emails, noted changes. I didn't push back publicly. Didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that silence could be louder than outrage when used correctly. But something deeper worried me. Miles had an odd comfort around risk, like he didn't believe it applied to him. He greenlit a new cloud vendor based in Eastern Europe without consulting legal or security. Brushed off my assessment of elevated risk exposure. "That's your job to worry about, not mine," he said. It was a bad fit, not just for me or the company. But no one wanted to admit it yet. The honeymoon phase was still holding. Until the night, everything tried to break. It started with an alert from a honeypot server just after 10:47 p.m. A ping from an IP range we'd blacklisted 2 quarters ago. Nothing major at first, but 5 minutes later, another flag. Then 3 more. Then 15. I closed the audit report I'd been reading and pulled up the network dashboard. Activity was spiking, but subtle. Whoever it was, they weren't noisy. They were good. Layered proxies, randomized payloads, lateral movement patterns designed to look like normal overnight traffic. Someone was in the system. I sounded the internal silent alarm and began locking down non-critical segments. By 11:30, it was clear we were facing a coordinated intrusion attempt, targeting customer analytics, proprietary ML models, and contract archives. They were bypassing surface-level defenses and testing secondary firewalls in patterns that mirrored a report I'd read 6 weeks ago from a private security intel group, APT 613, suspected to be state-aligned. I didn't go home. Didn't call anyone. I initiated Level 3 protocol, shut down outside syncs, rerouted internal authentication checks through a quarantine tunnel I'd built during the last budget cycle quietly, without approval, because I'd had a feeling we might need it someday. It worked. The breach was contained just after 3:12 a.m. No customer data lost. No contracts touched. IP theft, 0. We'd caught it mid-handshake. The attacker never made it past the second layer. By sunrise, the logs were clean, and my personal report was ready. 17 pages of timestamps, code snippets, IP traces, internal traffic maps. I walked into the 7:00 a.m. briefing like a surgeon, after a long night, exhausted, bloodless, and certain I'd saved the patient. Miles didn't look up from his tablet. "Why wasn't this prevented?" he asked flatly. "Why didn't we know sooner?" I stood there, silent. The man who ignored 6 separate warnings. The man who killed our threat intel contract to optimize spend. the man now demanding explanations for a fire he started. I didn't argue. I just handed him the report and quietly started preparing for what I knew was coming next. The internal debrief was brief. Miles called it an unfortunate disruption, thanked everyone for rising to the challenge, then pivoted straight into cost implications. Not once did he mention that a major breach had been prevented. Not once did he ask how we'd stopped it. He just clicked through a slideshow someone in comms had prepared, full of upward-pointing arrows and phrases like learning opportunity. After the meeting, I was pulled aside. Vanessa from HR was waiting with a man I didn't recognize, external counsel. Neutral tie, polite smile. "We're placing you on administrative leave pending review of last night's incident," she said, eyes darting between me and the hallway behind. "For what exactly?" I asked, though I already knew. "The CEO feels your response created unnecessary disruption. He also has concerns that outdated infrastructure may have contributed to the incident." I said nothing, just nodded once. She handed me a folder. Terms, conditions, legalese. A soft warning wrapped in HR speak. Take the suspension quietly, and maybe it won't get worse. My badge was deactivated before I reached the parking garage. The story they wanted to tell was already in motion. A director with too much autonomy, an over-engineered system, a dinosaur clinging to old protocols. They weren't going to say I'd saved the company. They were going to say I panicked and shut things down without proper oversight, that I failed to modernize, that I was the vulnerability. The next day, an internal memo went out from Miles. Last night's brief system disruption was due to legacy infrastructure being phased out in our digital modernization plan. Moving forward, our IT posture will reflect a more streamlined, cloud-native approach. We thank Alex Granger for his years of service. They'd already written the ending, but I hadn't even started writing mine. I didn't argue, didn't leak anything. I just went home. My personal laptop was already synced to a private storage node I maintained for diagnostics, legal, by the book. I'd set it up years ago when we transitioned to remote log auditing. No company data, just traffic patterns, anomaly flags, event timestamps. I opened it, pulled up the logs, and got to work. Every IP request, every inbound handshake, every authentication challenge, timestamped, matched to our internal IDS reports, backed up in triplicate. I recreated the entire breach timeline down to the second and annotated each step I took to contain it, where I moved traffic, what I shut down, who I notified, when. I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I was building a record. On day 3 of my suspension, I downloaded a fresh copy of our audit trail backups. I still had limited read-only access through my compliance sandbox, a loophole I'd coded myself. The same one I'd used in past audits, with approval. No one had bothered to revoke it. Inside the email archive, I found it. A risk assessment I'd submitted 2 months ago, warning about our new vendor's exposed APIs. Flagged as low priority by operations. Buried. Ignored. Also found Miles approving a cut to our endpoint detection subscription 2 weeks before the breach. And finally, a buried Slack thread between the vendor's integration lead and our CIO's assistant. New CEO, pushed for aggressive rollout, ignored recs from the security team. Hope this doesn't bite us. It had. And now, they were trying to blame the one person who'd kept the dam from breaking. I exported everything, compiled it into a local archive, labeled and encrypted, stored a backup in a remote node under a different name. There was no anger, just clarity. I wasn't the disruption. I was the only reason the company still had anything left to disrupt. And I'd make sure the right people figured that out whether they wanted to or not. The press release went out on a Tuesday morning, just before market open. Virion Solutions confirms that a recent network anomaly was due to legacy systems overseen by a now former cybersecurity lead. No customer data was compromised. The company has since accelerated its modernization plan under new leadership. No name, of course. Just Former cybersecurity lead. Neat. Passive. Sanitized. The media picked it up within hours. Industry blogs reposted the statement without question. Cyberweek Digest ran a piece titled, "Old Guard, Old Risks?" featuring a photo from an award I'd won 2 years ago cropped to remove the plaque. By noon, my inbox was full. Some condolences, mostly silence. A few former peers asked if it was true. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say yet. That afternoon, a courier delivered a package to my apartment. Inside, a severance agreement and a non-disclosure contract, already pre-signed by Vanessa in HR. 1 year's pay. No fault assigned. Standard legal gag order. Closure. They called it. I read it twice. Set it on the counter. Didn't touch it again. They wanted this buried. Clean. Simple. A single disgruntled name cut out from the org chart and sealed behind a settlement. But they'd underestimated the one thing I'd always been good at. Documentation. They weren't offering peace. They were offering silence. And I wasn't done speaking. I declined the NDA. No response came. Just silence. The kind that assumes you'll get tired eventually and move on. I didn't. Instead, I logged into Aegis, my off-site diagnostic environmenta. Redundant mirror I'd kept for testing integrations. Fully compliant. Fully isolated. But it had one thing the company's official logs didn't. The full pre-attack telemetry. Untouched. Unfiltered. Unredacted. Everything was there. Initial scans. Failed logins from flagged IPs. The moment our East Coast data center rerouted traffic without explanation. Miles' new vendor, SkyVault, sending malformed API packets just hours before the breach. All of it cataloged and searchable. I didn't rush. I didn't rage post. I organized, filed, cross-referenced. Then I made 3 calls. One to Alicia Torres, formerly lead cloud engineer, now at a fintech firm in Austin. One to David Hahn, our former compliance officer, forced out quietly 2 months into Miles' tenure. And one to Monica Reyes, legal analyst who'd helped me build our original risk framework. All 3 picked up. All 3 had stories. Alicia confirmed that SkyVault was flagged for lack of SOC 2 compliance and accelerated onboarding under pressure from above. David had copies of internal audit reports Miles had refused to release. Monica still had access to the legal archive clean versions, not the redlined ones PR scrubbed. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't stopped watching. And neither had I. Miles had buried the truth under jargon and turnover. I was going to dig it out. Carefully. Quietly. And when it surfaced, it wouldn't just expose a breach. It would expose everything. The breach had fingerprints. APT 412. Alias. Grey Arc. A known threat actor with confirmed links to Eastern European state. Backed cyber operations. Sophisticated. Patient. Surgical. Their hallmark. Gain access through third-party vendors with weak controls, then move laterally. We'd blocked them twice in past years. Both times, they'd targeted weak vendors trying to plug into our system through API testing environments. Both times, our IDS had caught it early. And both times, I'd logged the attempt, flagged the vendors, and added warnings to our procurement notes. Which made it especially interesting when I traced the breach vector back to SkyVault, the cloud storage vendor Miles insisted on onboarding 2 weeks before the attack. The same one I flagged for failing 2 of our internal audits. The same one Miles greenlit without even running a final penetration test. In my Aegis logs, I found the exact entry: a successful credential injection through a misconfigured webhook running in SkyVault's sandbox environment. That webhook connected via Miles' executive override to our production analytics cluster. The breach didn't happen because our defenses failed. It happened because someone opened the door. I checked the approval chain. The implementation request was originally declined by our procurement lead. Then, reversed overridden by Miles, under an executive exception clause. I still had the access logs from the day of deployment. Miles had logged in, approved the access path himself, skipped legal review, skipped security sign-off. And 2 weeks later, Greyark walked right in. It wasn't negligence anymore. It was something else. And I was going to find out what. Alicia called me late on a Thursday night. "You're not going to like this," she said. She'd been watching Skyvault's financial filings out of curiosity. Found something odd. The company had filed a disclosure in Luxembourg 2 days after the breach. The filing referenced anticipated acquisition, activity and valuation growth tied to data convergence opportunities. Legal speak. But she translated, they were about to be bought. And the valuation spike? Based on systems, they were suddenly claiming access tours. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, David sent me a redacted board memo from his archive. A section buried in the appendix referenced a pending strategic integration with Estronics AG, a tech conglomerate based in Zurich. It was a merger proposal, quietly introduced by Miles under the guise of global expansion. But Estronics wasn't after our people. They were after our proprietary IPML frameworks, customer segmentation engines, and predictive analytics tools. Everything the attackers tried to access during the breach. The timing was too precise. The breach, the access path, the deal. None of it accidental. I checked my logs again. The breach attempt had stopped just short of downloading the full segmentation engine codebase. A dry run. Enough to prove access. Not enough to trigger full alarms. Unless, of course, the goal wasn't to steal everything just to prove it could be accessed. To drive up valuation. To justify the merger. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't just about security anymore. It was corporate espionage, dressed in clean suits and press releases. And the man who fired me had set it all in motion. I opened a new folder, labeled it Docs, M. Trenholm. Inside, I started compiling everything. Timestamps, logs, vendor contracts, approval chains, redacted memos, screenshots, names. The breach wasn't the climax. It was the prelude. And I was done watching from the outside. The burner account still worked. I'd created it years ago, during a company-wide social engineering audit and unlisted email under a fake internal subdomain. I kept it alive out of habit, checking it once a month just to see if our internal filters ever caught it. They never did. I logged in from a library terminal 20 miles from my apartment, used a VPN chain that routed through 4 countries, sent the first email with no attachment, just a message and a name. Subject: Trenholm. Body: I have proof. Contact securely. No attribution. If you're not interested, delete this now. If you are, respond to this address with your Signal ID. I sent it to someone who'd made enemies before. Lee Navarro, investigative tech reporter at Stack Depth News. Lee didn't do fluff. She didn't flinch. She'd once taken down a major cloud hosting provider for falsifying uptime metrics. If anyone would chase this, it'd be her. She responded 4 hours later. A Signal ID. No questions. No fluff. I loaded a redacted summary of my dossier. Removed names, masked IPs, scrambled metadata. What remained was undeniable. An executive override leading to a known APT access vector. A vendor underqualified and overconnected. A merger strategy whose timing aligned perfectly with a staged intrusion. The final document I sent was a time-stamped audit trail showing Miles's login during the Skyvault override window, something only a system administrator or forensic analyst could access. I never signed my name. But I didn't need to. Truth doesn't require a signature. It just needs a signal. The message came through encrypted text. Late at night. Check deleted files folder. Board review day. You'll know what you're looking for. No name, but I recognized the syntax clean. No filler. Direct. It was Tara Singh. Mid-level counsel, quiet, sharp. She'd been on my security compliance team for 3 years before transferring to legal. Always read every line. Always ask the right questions. I logged into the secure backup environment I'd copied during my last few weeks at Virion. One of our audit servers was set to mirror board meeting materials for 72 hours before wipe. Most execs didn't even know it existed. I scanned file clusters dated 2 days before the breach. Found the folder. Inside, a draft security audit prepared by Risco partners. It flagged SkyVault as high risk, not medium high, due to non-compliance, outdated encryption standards, and lack of breach response transparency. The final audit had been scrubbed, language softened, concerns buried under generic, monitoring recommended phrasing. But here it was, the real version. In the file properties, last edited by M. Trenholm, the deletion timestamp? Exactly 10 minutes after the board review ended. He hadn't just ignored the warnings. He'd erased them. I exported the file, encrypted it, and added it to the growing dossier. Then I sent a message to the same burner account Lee had responded to. Subject: Addendum. Body: this should confirm the audit was altered. File origin and deletion metadata intact. Original flags highlighted. I never heard back. But I didn't need to. The story was starting to write itself now. There were 9 board members. 3 were window-dressing former execs with golden parachutes and expensive wine collections. 2 were political appointees, more interested in market optics than operational truth. But 4 were something else. Elena Ruiz, former CISO at a Fortune 100 bank. Quiet, principled, known for walking out of a boardroom once when someone suggested covering up a data breach. Arjun Nayar, investor, veteran, still referred to employees as the people holding the line. Cheryl Morton, audit committee chair, career forensic accountant, allergic to shortcuts. And Robert Chan, built his own company from scratch, took it public, knew what it meant to lose everything because you didn't ask the right questions soon enough. I sent each of them a USB drive by overnight courier. No name, no return address. Inside each package, a printed letter and a single line in plain black font. Ask your CEO about the deleted audit. The drive contained 3 things. 1. The original Risco audit showing SkyVault's security failures. 2. Internal chat logs from procurement and legal, showing Miles overriding standard controls. 3. A timeline log compiled and annotated showing the breach path, Miles's approvals, and my termination. Each file was timestamped, hashed, and cross-referenced. The letter ended with, "If you don't act, this won't stay private. You've been warned. You've also been given the truth." I waited. I didn't need to wait long. 3 days later, the board called an emergency executive session. Miles skipped his usual pre-meeting press smile. Looked pale. He knew. And so did they. Lee Navarro dropped the story at 6:12 a.m. on a Monday. Leaked audit shows Virion CEO ignored cybersecurity warnings, then fired the director who prevented the breach. It spread fast. The article wasn't just well-written, it was surgical. It included screenshots, emails, Diagram 7, a short video clip from the board session where a visibly uncomfortable Miles said, "I don't recall the specifics of that assessment." The footage didn't leak from me. It didn't have to. Someone on the inside was ready now. By 10:00 a.m., Virion cover-up was trending. Investors started asking questions. News outlets picked it up. Cyber negligence at the top. CNBC called it Breachgate, said TechSphere. Stock dropped 11% by close. By noon, Miles canceled all media appearances and issued a statement through legal. "We are aware of recent claims and are reviewing them internally." Too late. The board called another session. This time, without him. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen table, Coffee cooling beside me, laptop open but untouched. I didn't post, didn't comment. I just watched. For the first time in months, I didn't have to tell the truth. The world was starting to say it for me. By Friday, the SEC had released a brief but pointed statement. We are aware of recent allegations involving executive misconduct and cybersecurity disclosure violations at Virion Solutions and have opened a formal inquiry. No fanfare. Just the sound of doors unlocking down a long hallway. The stock took another hit. Internal morale, already thin, cracked. My phone buzzed constantly, reporters, former colleagues, even competitors who'd once ghosted me, all asking the same thing. Was it true? What would I say? Would I go on record? I said nothing. Not out of fear, out of principle. I hadn't done this to be quoted. I'd done it to fix what was broken. And right now, it was finally breaking the right way. On Monday, Virion's board convened another emergency session. This one ended with a one-sentence memo to all employees. Miles Trenholm has resigned as CEO. Effective immediately. No farewell email. No press conference. Just an exit. The board thanked him for his vision and said they were moving in a new direction aligned with Virion's core values of trust and transparency. I read it once and closed the tab. Later that afternoon, I received a call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. Then came an email from Elena Ruiz, subject line: private discussion request. The message was short. The board would like to meet. No obligations. No PR. Just a conversation. I replied with 2 words. Name the time. We met in a neutral location, private room at a small conference center. No logos, no staff. Just coffee on a tray and 4 board members sitting quietly as I walked in. No small talk. Elena Ruiz spoke first. Alex, the board owes you more than an apology. We owe you an opportunity to fix what we failed to see. She slid a folder across the table. Chief Information Security Officer. Executive role offer. Full board access. Independent budget authority. Direct oversight of vendor procurement. And a new clause. Internal whistleblower protections for any team member in technical or security roles. You'd report directly to us, she added. No more middlemen. I opened the folder. Skimmed the terms. Everything I'd ever asked forcefully, professionally, and ignored was right there, signed. Robert Chan leaned forward. We need someone who sees around corners, who doesn't flinch under pressure, who documents everything even when no one asks. I looked up. You mean someone like me? He smiled, nodding once. I closed the folder and stood. Not arrogant, not vengeful, just firm. I'll think about it, I said. Because I wasn't done deciding who I wanted to be, just who I'd never be again. I returned to Virion on a Wednesday morning. No cameras. No press release. Just a laminated visitor badge that security replaced with a new permanent one by the time I reached the executive floor. The office looked the same. Same glass partitions. Same beige carpet. Same recycled air. But everything had changed. They'd cleared out Trenholm's corner suite. Left it empty. Quiet. The board said they'd leave it that way until the next vote. A reminder, maybe, or a warning. My new office was smaller but wired into everything: systems access, vendor approvals, internal audit feeds. For the first time in a long time, security wasn't buried under finance or operations. It was on its own level, by design. The first thing I did was bring Stephen Yang into my office. Junior analyst. Quiet. Smart. He'd been the only one who asked about me after the breach. The only one who'd raised flags when SkyVault's access logs didn't line up. And the only one who got demoted after asking too many questions. You're running operations now, I told him. I'll handle executive strategy, but you're the one leading the team. He blinked. Why me? Because you saw it. And you didn't flinch. He nodded once. That was all I needed. Over the next few weeks, we rebuilt. Not just the infrastructure, though, we rewrote most of it from the ground up, but the culture. Every change logged. Every decision peer-reviewed. We made the red tape work for us instead of around us. I met weekly with the board. No layers, no filters, just data and decisions. No one asked me to be less cautious anymore. They wanted the full truth, unbuffered. Miles's name never came up again. That part was over. I didn't talk much in meetings. Didn't offer grand visions. I listened. I read between the lines. And I gave answers that weren't always easy to hear. And when I walked through the halls now, people didn't avoid eye contact. They nodded. Not out of fear. Out of respect. That's all I ever wanted, really. Not a headline. Not a spotlight. Just a company that told the truth. As I stood by the window overlooking the city, badge clipped to my shirt, reports open on my tablet, I thought about how far we'd come. I never wanted a fight. Just the truth to matter. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.